it's going to encounter some shear, and that is going to rip that storm apart very quickly. So it goes from a 3 down to a 1, down to a tropical depression incredibly fast. The big story we've been talking to you about is the storm surge. Right now, the biggest storm surge is on the east coast side of Florida. All of that water is being pushed in from the strong winds. On the west coast side, it's entirely the opposite. The water is actually retreating. It's being pushed back out. You do not want to be on the beach when that water comes back. It comes back in fast and furious, and it can turn into a deadly situation incredibly fast. And it is going to come back as that storm makes its way north, crossing over the Maine Peninsula. That water will come back in, and that, Jake, is when we're going to start to see some of the biggest storm surges for the west coast region of Florida.
And what's going to happen? We have obviously a lot of individuals, including our own Kyung La, in Miami Beach right now. What's going to happen as the storm hits Florida to the areas of Miami and Miami Beach?
Right, so the current conditions that she is dealing with now are going to sustain away for several hours before she finally starts to see conditions get a little bit better in Miami. And that's going to be for most people in southeast Florida. It's going to remain bad for hours, and then it will finally begin to let up. Now, the rain bands will be off and on. You'll go from light showers to torrential downpours. But in terms of the winds, those are going to remain hurricane force gusts for quite some time. The west coast side, you're going to start to see the conditions deteriorate rapidly over the coming hours, especially the folks in Tampa.
All right, Allison, thank you so much. And we're going to go back to CNN's Kyung La. She's in Miami Beach. And Kyung, we're told the conditions where you are going to get worse. Are you able to detect that just on the ground? Kyung La, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Let's go back to Allison Chinchar. So, Allison, in the Severe Weather Center, the storm it has made landfall, obviously, in Key West. It did so at 9:10 this morning, you said, and it's making itself up the west coast of Florida. There are a lot of individuals who fled southern Florida, 4 places upstate, that are now right in the eye of the storm.
Tampa being one of them. And unfortunately, what we've seen in the short term, the last couple of hours, is a shift in the track. Around Tampa, it's only a 14-mile difference. It no longer is expected to go right through downtown Tampa, but just about 14 miles west. And Jake, under normal circumstances, you would think that would be a good thing. Great. The main center is not going to go over downtown, but further west. The problem with that is it actually allows more of the storm surge to pile into Tampa Bay. So in theory, yes, your winds may not be as strong as that center of circulation pushes further to the west, but it increases your chances for the storm surge and potentially the height of said storm surge as well.
All right, we're going to go now to Key Largo, Florida, where we find CNN's Bill Weir. Bill, you're in the upper Keys. The hurricane made landfall on the lower Keys at 9:10 a.m. Describe for us the conditions you're experiencing.
It's really a dramatic shift as the wind starts to whip around now. Actually, the Irma came ashore at the exact spot we did the last evacuation live shot on, I guess, Friday night, as people were starting to head north on US 1 after so many admonitions from first responders and the authorities now. We actually had to move our position to the under end of this carport, so now we're facing Biscayne Bay, and this is where the sloppy, dirty side of the storm, as you talk about, will start to pick up. As an extra menace, we have a sign here that says "Caution, crocodiles in the area," a reminder of the biodiversity in this part of Florida. You know, you could, I guess, make a joke about a crocnado, but if that is the case, it would not be a threat. It would be, obviously, wildlife is as much risk here as human life, but we're checking in with our contacts that we've made over the last couple of days around. We're hearing from people on the Atlantic side of Key Largo who are riding it out. They're losing tiki huts. They're seeing sheets of plywood blow around. No major boat damage. If you remember back to Hurricane Andrew, the way those boats were stacked like cordwood, nobody has seen that yet at this particular, thank goodness. But the big concern is what these big 100, 110-mile-an-hour winds will do to the infrastructure in this part of the Keys. The ocean railroad that they built back in the 30s was taken out by a hurricane. People worry that if one of those bridges goes, it will cut off the Keys from the mainland for the unforeseeable future. They do have a desalination plant. They do have a power generation station that can give them maybe 60% of their peak power to tide them over to get things back normal. But it is really bad. I think this is my 8th hurricane. I'm hardly a seasoned meteorology. We did Katrina together. Did Ike and Gustav. This is the most violent I've ever seen, Jake.
Stay safe, Bill.
We will.
Joining us on the phone is Senator Marco Rubio. He's a Republican of Florida. Senator Rubio? Joining us on the phone right now from his home in Miami is Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Hurricane Irma's destructive eye wall hit the Florida Keys just this morning. Do you have any sense of how bad it is down there in the Keys?
Well, I don't think anyone does at this point because obviously there's not a lot of people there. Thankfully, they left. The ones that are, we're not in communication with. But we can just imagine, if you've ever been to the Keys, these are very narrow chain of islands basically built on coral rock and coral reefs. And it's not going to be good, which is why we needed to get people out of there. We're deeply concerned about the storm is intensifying as the waters are over 90 degrees in the Caribbean basin, the Florida Straits, in that Gulf stream and region. So we're concerned about it intensifying as it heads into southwest Florida, Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, Tampa Bay. I mean, that has always been our biggest fear, is a massive storm headed into that region, pushing all that water in there, plus the wind. We're deeply concerned about that. So, frankly, everybody in Florida needs to be taking precautions. The worst is yet to come for South and Southeast Florida, which is still facing bad storms. We haven't had power in my house here since 2 in the morning and so forth. But Southwest Florida, this is a very disturbing chain of, and are hunkered down in a safe place.
You are in your home in Miami. Are you safe? Why did you decide to ride out the storm in your home?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm not in a flood zone. I'm not in a not on the coast. My home was built in 2005, so my roof is built to withstand a Category 3 storm, in which we won't get the effects of in Miami, and my roof can withstand that as well. So we have shutters on the window and so forth. Now, a lot of people left South Florida, and some of them drove to Tampa and Orlando, and now they find themselves kind of in the eye of this thing, or certainly facing this thing down. And so that's one of the calculations we made. At this point, hopefully,